In this video, I want to talk about how to take advantage of your study group. And because we have a Discord channel for course owners, a lot of what I cover here, I'm going to frame in a way where I talk about how this applies to using that Discord channel. Now, if you haven't used a study group or been part of a study group before, I think you'll recognize that these first couple of points are especially relevant to you. It's quite challenging, I think, to make progress in poker as an independent player or as a bit of a lone wolf. Having a support system and also just getting external motivation through that support system. For me, it was a huge part of my learning path early on in my career, and it's continued to be a huge part of my learning path because I really don't think any other method of study accelerates learning as well as a study group does. So anytime I'm working on a new set of sims, I'm looking at a new set of preflop ranges, I'm training something, if I share that work with someone else in my study group, the chance that it sticks with me is like it's a huge difference. There's really no comparison. Independent study, when I look at a chart by myself late at night because I wanted to review a spot, it sticks sometimes. It occasionally connects, but sharing it with someone else, and often in my case, attempting to teach it to someone else, is going to solidify that learning, and it's just going to engage you with these other people who are now more inclined to share that same type of learning with you. And this is where the collaborative work benefits come from. You're exchanging ideas, you're getting different perspectives on how to approach the learning, like whatever the learning path, or how to approach poker in general, different strategic approaches. It's hard to overstate how valuable it is to establish that back and forth. And the way in which I expect to set up the Discord is to create spaces for sharing specific types of information. So having a channel dedicated to working with each different study method that I've highlighted throughout the course. Having a dedicated channel to talk about self-evaluation and database review and the different methods of self-reflection when it comes to evaluating your game. And having a place to communicate about this, having a place to talk with other people who are going through the same process is intended to pretty much like it's a fail-safe, right? You don't want to assume that the way you've gone about things is 100%, but also by sharing with others, you're encouraging them to do the same thing. And you make sure that anytime there's a different angle to look at that, you're going to hear about it, which is you don't know what you don't know, is often what I talk with students about when we're looking at database review. Until someone looks at your approach or hears you talk hands or hears you explain a situation, you don't know what's wrong with that explanation or what is missing from that explanation. So this is a big part of my approach to using a study group or to my coaching as well, is just share everything. Be upfront with what you're working on, put it all out in the group, be public about it, and don't worry about what you'll get back, because you will get something back, and you'll almost always get more back than what you give in. This is part of the network effect too. There's too many people for that exchange to be imbalanced in a way where you're giving away more than you're getting back. Because if, let's say you're in a study group of 10 people, we did a couple study groups actually last year that were 6 to 8 people with through Run It Once. And I found that every time someone shared something, whether it was like a short video play and explain or a hand analysis or a sim that they were working on, they would have 3, 4, 5 people in the group responding back to them. So just by putting yourself out there, you get 4 or 5 times as much back. And that was in a small group. I can only hope that a larger group that comes with the people who purchase this course is going to provide, 20 times as much. Now, I've been part of a lot of study groups, some better than others, and these are a few of the weaknesses that I'm hoping to keep at bay when working in our Discord group. But of course, some of this stuff could happen, and I'm putting this out there so that other members or Run It Once moderators or whoever is involved is aware of the common problems that we might run into. Now, hopefully, the number one item here is not a problem because I'll be moderating. But an unmoderated study group, well, it lacks direction, which is the second point here. But it also can just lead to chaos, right? The tendency for a large group of people who don't have specific guidelines for how to make use of a study group is to first maybe just share what they're working on, which is great. But by sharing wherever you're at, whatever your game is, whatever random thing it is that you're working on that day, there can quickly become a chaotic feeling to, oh, I don't really have control over what I'm learning in this study group. I'm just learning whatever, person B shared this morning. And going through that process for an indefinite period of time, it falls under the category of what I'm constantly discouraging, which is like aimless study, right? You want to come in with a game plan, and by allowing, let's say you have one channel, let's say it's unorganized, everyone puts everything in that one channel. Whatever the loudest voices are working on that day is going to determine what the study group is focused on that day. So by providing moderation and direction, we're hoping to create targeted spaces that focus on moving everyone in the same direction on the same goals. Now, a big problem with study groups just in general is that the people who seek them out tend to be pretty new, and the players who are the most willing to share also tend to be pretty new. And I don't think that there's an amazing way to overcome this. I think that a shift in mindset towards the value of groups in spite of this problem is the more proactive or the more productive approach. So I've participated in plenty of study groups where I felt that I was taking on more of a coaching role or more of a leadership role, and still felt like I learned a ton from participating in those groups. And the more that I gave to those groups, the more I got back. And it doesn't matter that you stack up your skill set, yourself versus the other players. And if it's, if you happen to be one of the best players in the group, then you feel like it's not worth your time. No matter what study group you join, that's going to be your mentality. And it's going to restrict you from getting the most out of the networking benefits that a study group allows. Anyone who's willing to work on their game, especially with how strong tools have become in learning poker, can contribute to your learning process, regardless of how strong of a player you are. So just finding ways to engage and take advantage of the information there, take advantage of the varied perspectives, take advantage of whatever it is that everyone's willing to give. You can always learn different methods, different perspectives. And whatever it is that you feel might be holding you back as a technically stronger player is probably not something you needed to be working on in the study group in the first place. So it's not important that you share, cool high-level hands from a big game. It's more important that you step back into the kind of evaluate, study, game planned framework and think about what do I need to get from my current point A to my intended point B, and how can working with other people help move me in that direction faster. Now, this last one is a hard one. The bystander effect is, if you're not familiar, the tendency for people who are part of large crowds or large groups to step back and wait for someone more qualified to make the first move or to share the information or to take charge as a leader. And all I can really suggest in this to deal with this problem is, first of all, to reward engagement in some way. So I think that positive reinforcement of people sharing and people putting themselves out there is going to be key to the culture of making a good Discord community. The other thing is going to be to task people with specific roles as often as possible, so that you empower a large number of people to be the effective leader in an environment where, let's say, the top moderator isn't around, none of the moderators around, maybe the person in charge of the project that was currently going misses for a week, and there's nothing on the schedule that says, there's a second project or a third project that's supposed to take over. By having a lot of people in a position where they feel empowered to be a leader, you encourage consistent engagement, which is key to make sure that the group continues working. If the group goes silent for a day, for 2 days, it's so much more likely that it's going to continue to be silent, because everyone moves quickly online. They have a lot of different resources they could be focusing their attention on. And if this particular resource isn't creating enough engagement, then they will move on to those other ones. So this is one that's going to take a lot of effort to continue pushing past. And that's something that will be mostly my responsibility, as well as anyone from Run It Once who gets involved in moderation. So some of the pitfalls that come with more disorganized or lower quality study groups. The aimless chatter is kind of a tricky one, because I think that a well-moderated study group would also leave space for off-topic. And I want to make a clear distinction here between aimless chatter and off-topic chatter. I think that my concern falls under the category of, in the productive workspace, there's aimless chatter. This is a problem. But if in the dedicated off-topic space, there's aimless chatter, that's a positive thing. Because that means there's social engagement within the group. So I don't mean to imply that aimless chatter is strictly bad. The problem comes when organization is not clear and the chatter floods the productive workspace. So having clearly marked channels and a well-organized community is going to alleviate this problem. Number 2, avoiding embarrassment is what a lot of people, I think, would use to justify not speaking up in a study group, or simply just not sharing, not putting out information. And again, this is just what keeps the group going and what provides value to the group is individuals sharing what they're working on, sharing their thoughts, sharing their feedback, even if they don't feel qualified, so that they can get back feedback on their feedback, or just creating an exchange of information on any topic is going to make sure that we don't run into that bystander problem. So it has to be a very supportive environment where people are encouraged to share opinions, even if those opinions are perhaps uninformed. And constructive feedback is given when other members feel that they can, correct mistakes, fix broken thought process, improve strategic decisions, whatever it is. But we have to be comfortable sharing, or else we won't get that feedback, and we'll be the bystander in that equation where you don't connect the value of the study group to your own personal situation. Now, generic line checks are just a frequent, I think, it's a hallmark of somewhat unengaged study groups when they're more like chat rooms, and the person who's contributing is not sure what they're trying to get out of it. I've brought this up a number of times at this point, I think, because this is no different from saying, copying a hand history into PioSolver, copying a hand history to your coach, looking for like a yes, no, is not the best way to take advantage of a community. If you copied a hand and asked a more broad question, like, hey, this is an interesting turn spot I found myself in, and I don't know what my range is supposed to do, now we have a conversation to have. But generic line checks of like, yes, no, is this hand good? I mean, that can have a channel if there's a lot of interest in just, talking hands. But I don't think that's a productive part of a study plan. And the last one, which certainly will be rectified with good organization in our community, is not saving your work as you do it. I think having a community without a shared workspace is sort of it's a wasted opportunity, because there's going to be so much valuable insight. There's likely to be a lot of information shared. And if that information only goes into a chat room, it won't be searchable for new members. It won't be archived in a way that you can look back to it. So I think it's really, really important that we save everything and that we organize it so that the value of the community is stored for future members or for future reference. All right, so to sum up, the best practices, and these can be things that we all hold each other accountable for as we take advantage of the Discord group. Number one is a team environment, which means maybe different things to different people, but in my opinion, this is, everyone's contributing and not expecting anything back. So everything that is contributed to the community gets shared, gets saved, gets archived, whatever. And anyone who's doing that shouldn't feel concerned about whether or not they're going to receive that value back. Because again, I assure you that if you're taking advantage of this study group properly, you're going to get back far more than what you give in. It's hard for me to imagine how one person could possibly give in more than they're able to take back when there's a large enough network. And this is leading into why we need to reward engagement. Having a silent community, or having a community that's unwilling to share their opinions out of fear of, being insulted, or out of embarrassment, or whatever it is that's holding them back. We need to do everything we can to eliminate that. So encouraging people to share their opinions, discussing honestly with people when you feel that their opinions have, a flawed piece of logic or bad information or whatever. And just being willing to share and correct people without judgment is going to be really, really important to keep the community moving in a direction where they're willing to keep sharing and they're willing to keep evaluating. And on the moderator side, the best practice is to take organization and to take moderation seriously, because allowing a Discord channel to run itself is going to lead to the lack of direction and the other concerns that I had with just sort of unorganized, chaotic groups. So this is why we need to save everything and share everything. And I mean, a lot of it is going to be set up in a way that has made sense to me in the past from what worked in previous study groups. But I also think that the organization can change and adapt to new information and whatever makes sense at the time. So a lot of this is not set in stone, and probably what I should have included on here is feedback is going to be really, really valuable for me, for anyone else who's working on this, and for all the members of the group, because it's extremely unlikely that we're going to get everything right from the get-go. And whoever's contributing is going to have an opinion worth listening to. So certainly do give your opinion on, probably just have a dedicated channel for feedback on structure and organization and all the tools and everything like that. But the point of partnering this course with a Discord community was to provide the study group environment that's been so helpful to me, using a lot of the material that I found useful when studying over the last few years and coaching over the last few years. And that's going to be something that keeps changing. So we're going to continue to change the community as that happens.